yourself or to jail? There were a lot of interesting questions, and I guess we have to just choose a couple of them. The first question is, will you tell us about the mind going voluntarily into abeyance in relationship as the second part you mentioned in your talk just now?
Let us take it up first. It's a joy to have such an alert audience. They have noticed that I referred to two aspects of education, two ways of education, and I took up only one, and the other was left out. So, how does one educate oneself or educate the mind for going into abeyance in the movement of relationship? Now, the learning of observation is the foundation for both education that is taken in aloneness and education that is taken in relationships. So when I sit down and look at the contents of my mind, that is to say, my own contents, my own psychological substance, I come face to face with the facts. Before observation, I had only images about myself. What my parents thought of me, what my husband thought, my wife thought, my friends thought of me, what I had created. So I had only images. And now I have an encounter with the facts. So I'm aware now that I have jealousy, or I am violent, or I have anger, or pettiness, or affection, compassion, whatever it be. I am aware. In place of being ignorant about myself, now I am aware of myself and understanding. With that understanding, I move into relationships. What happens then? Something happens, or someone does something, says something that hurts me. That is to say, hurts the ego that has collected norms and criteria of pleasure and pain. What is pleasurable, what is painful? All these ideas are collected by the me. So the me gets hurt. Now I have observed myself, so I know that this getting hurt is a reaction of the past contained in me. It is the reaction of the me. And this reaction is going to prevent an intelligent response. The reaction of getting hurt now wants to show to the other person that you have hurt me. Or I would like to hurt the person in return because I was hurt. To take a revenge, very mild revenge, through a word, through a gesture, through turning away, through indifference, callousness, many expressions of revenge. So, as soon as the reaction of getting hurt is there, I wait, I do not give in. I say, well, these hurts and wounds are the result of the collection of norms and criteria. It's the movement of past. Now, if I react, I will be reacting to the behavior of the person and not to the need of the situation. So, I wait for a second so that the reaction gets digested. It subsides. And there is a space between me and the other person. I can respond to the need rather than react to the hurt. It's an intelligent way of being together. Supposing I notice weaknesses in my colleagues or friends or people living at home, then, and I have noticed those weaknesses in me too. So, in relationship, I try to dodge the weaknesses of other persons and bring out the best in them. There are ways and ways of relating to the people. So, this self-understanding becomes a great source of strength. Somebody says, well, you are a hypocrite. Then I don't get angry because I have seen hypocrisy in me. I don't get angry. I said, well, yes, I am that. The reaction doesn't come up. There is no self-cheating anymore. The mind goes into abeyance at the moment of reaction. The reaction has come up, but before it overwhelms me, my observation comes to my help. So, I do not surrender to the reaction. I do not let it distort my response. And my response comes then from a different level of understanding. I don't know if you see the point. There is a space between the behavior of one person and the response that comes of me. Previously, there was no possibility of response. There was action, reaction, action, reaction. Hate, more hate. Anger, more anger. Bitter words, still more bitter words. He was hitting back in a way. And that's an endless chain. It's no ending. But as an inquirer, I would like to see that there is an ending to misery and psychological suffering in me as well as others. I don't want to add to the psychological suffering of the other person, nor do I want to increase mine. So, observation enables me to meet the overwhelming invasion of the past in me. Meet it halfway, as it were, and respond to the situation in freedom from the reaction. Supposing this doesn't happen, because of the habit of behaving through reactions, I behave, I react, I get angry, or I insult, or I hurt, and I realize that. First was the moment of reactions coming up and you not getting overwhelmed by it, responding from a different source. The second situation is you get so overwhelmed, before you know you have acted, before you know the words escape your mouth or the behavior escapes. When that happens, the person who is interested in educating the ego to go into abeyance and let other energies release does a very interesting thing. If the person is an inquirer, he or she walks up to the person and says, I'm sorry I have hurt you. I'm not concerned with that person, whether that person had insulted or hurt, but if I have done it in return, I walk up and I say, I'm sorry I have done it. This openness, this willingness to say sorry, to ask forgiveness, to apologize, is a very important and significant way of educating the mind, of going into abeyance. Because the ego doesn't like to apologize. It feels that it is a weakness. Because the other person had done it, I reacted. So we justify our reactions. It doesn't like to see that in return for one wrong thing, if you do second wrong, two wrongs never make a right. Or two wrongs never end the process of making mistakes. One is interested in putting an end to it. So one walks up and says, I'm sorry. Then the ego does not like to go and to apologize, to say sorry. So next time it is more alert. Before reacting, it is alert because it has now seen that if I get overwhelmed by reactions, become a slave to them, and behave in incorrect ways, the intelligence is going to make me apologize. It doesn't like to get into that position. So as a preventive measure, it becomes more alert and sensitive. That is the way of helping the mind to go into non-action. Once that education is over, one lives in that dimension of emptiness, one lives in that dimension of silence constantly. That is the abode, that is your home. And whenever you have to move into relationships, you move out of the equipoise, the peace, the freshness, the relaxation of that silence. Now we live on the mental plane. There's chaos, that is anarchy, there's so much disturbance, tension, conflicts, and we move into relationships out of those conflicts and tensions. And see another person living in the silence, moving into relationships, the same mad world, handling the relationships in a different way, because the source of relationship is different. Thirdly, a religious inquirer or any sensitive, alert citizen is aware that life cannot be separated from death. Death is present in the midst of life, and death can put an end to our life any moment. It is just behind the shoulder, accompanying us, as it were, everywhere. So one has to make the best of the timeless now, or the present moment, the present relationship. So there is an awareness that this opportunity to live is the only opportunity we have, that today is the reality, the now, the this, as the reality. The tomorrow is only in the mind. So why not pour one's best into it? Why behave carelessly, carelessly, indifferently, absent-mindedly? Why behave with the pressure of all reactions and hurts and wounds? Awareness of death changes the quality of consciousness. It takes away all the fear, all the habits of postponement, procrastination. It keeps you on your toes. So there is a possibility of you looking to the other person, listening to the other person more thoroughly. You are totally present with that person. That total communion, total presence in the relationship again puts the mind into abeyance and releases intelligence. The intensity of the totality releases intelligence. I don't know how to communicate this. If you stand at the seashore and look at the ocean, without words, just look at it. Or of a dark, starlit night, somewhere where there is no electricity, in the forest or at the mountain top, if you can look at the space, the emptiness of the skies, the communion does something to you. In the same way, when you are so totally with another human being, totally present, looking, listening, then that touch of your totality does something to the person in whose presence you are, and your being with the fact affects the quality of your consciousness. You know, we are accustomed to half-hearted, absent-minded contacts with reality. And one is talking about just being present totally with the wholeness of your being, so that the part, the mind, the ego goes into non-action and the wholeness moves. Intelligence is the movement of that wholeness. It is the movement of totality. But I think I'm answering questions, so I should turn to next question, please.
Do concentration on mantras, visual forms, and various breathing techniques have any usefulness in coming to this
No,
state of
please
silence?
come here and read little slowly. I have to get the question.
Okay.
So other people also have to listen to it. Yeah.
Do concentration on mantras, visual forms, and various breathing techniques have any usefulness in coming to this state of silence?
Do concentration on mantras or visual forms or any other techniques can be of help in this education? Now let us look at the question very carefully. Who will concentrate? The I, the me, will concentrate. What is concentration? You gather all your energies together and focus them on a predetermined point. Who determines the point of your concentration? Either some guru or teacher gives you a mantra, or you pick up a mantra from some book, and on that predetermined point, you want to focus your attention. It may be a visual form, or it could be a mantra. The mantra is a Sanskrit word. Many words have traveled from the east to the west. But they have not traveled, those who brought those words to the west did not bring them with their totality. Languages are born of cultures. They are born in the soil of cultures. The word mantra belongs to the science of Nada Yoga or the yoga of sound. The Easterners had studied the sound metaphysics, the metaphysics of sound energy. According to them, sound is the primal source of creation. Creation has emanated from sound. In the beginning there was sound, a homogeneous, self-created sound, which was not born of any friction. Do we know of any sound that is not born of friction? We don't know. But that is their cosmogenesis. And they use that sound energy for therapeutical purposes, for healing or curing those who are physically ill, psychologically sick. Nada, the sound, or a mantra is used. Originally, mantras are used for pacification of nerves. If somebody is too much disturbed, nerves are chaotic, very much perturbed, tortured nerves, then the ancient wise people would study the person, a pronunciation of his words. They would see which word he uses frequently and catch that word, give him a mantra in which those words would be repeated. Mantras are a very scientific thing. So they would ask him to repeat that sound or that mantra to get enveloped in that energy emanating from the sound waves, and so that the curing would take place due to the energy. So mantra had therapeutical value. Even today they are used in the Indian medicinal system, Ayurveda. Mantras play a very great part in all the yoga systems. Well, this is not the time, so let us proceed. The person says, you concentrate on the mantra. That is to say, you utter the mantra. You repeat it. You may repeat it audibly, you may repeat it inaudibly. There are 4 ways of chanting mantras. In the audible, 2 ways, and in the inaudible also 2 different ways. Now, who is going to use the mantra? I am going to use it. It's a psychophysical activity. gathering the energies, focusing them on the mantra, holding them there. You have to contain or hold the focusing of energies. So, I am engaged in psychophysical activity. I want to educate the mind to go into non-action or abeyance, and I start by engaging the mind into some activity. These two are different directions. Now, when the mind moves and engages itself in any activity, chanting the mantra, focusing on some visual form, you are focusing your attention on that. It's exercising energy. So, that activity results in experience. There cannot be an activity without resulting in an experience. So this chanting of mantras also produce experiences. Physical experiences, psychological experiences. Those experiences have pleasure or pain. So the whole paraphernalia, the me at the center as the doer, as the actor, then the activity, then experiences, then the me is the experiencer, the pain, the pleasure, the intoxication of pleasure or the depression of pain, and you go on. So how can one educate the mind to go into non-action if one is keeping busy, if one keeps the center busy, moving in some way or the other for chanting the mantras, concentrating on some visual form or any other technique or method? Who is going to employ the technique? The mind. So you keep the mind in the framework of space and time. You keep the center of the me as the doer, the experiencer, etc. Naturally, this direction is not the direction of going towards non-action or abeyance. It's a different direction altogether. After having said this, as I had said in the beginning, that concentration is an art and science. In India, Tibet and China, you will find various techniques of concentration. And those techniques are used for helping a troubled person. Now, in the industrially advanced, scientifically advanced countries, human beings have to live under the stress and strain for which the human organism was really not made. It's inhuman speed, inhuman diversification on fronts on which one human being has to function, the complexity and the complications of the economic political structures. So constantly we are under the pressure, and such a person needs some help. Please listen carefully. A person needs some help after going back from work or as a result of having been working at a job for years. The system is damaged. It has been living under so much stress and strain, it is benumbed, or it is slowed down, or it is damaged, or there are scratches and scars on the psyche. So the person needs help. And therefore, one goes back and sits down quietly. The mind cannot become quiet. The body also cannot become quiet. Therefore, one takes help of a mantra. In the beginning, for a few minutes, one takes the help, chants that. By chanting it, by repeating it, by concentrating on it, the scattered energy is being brought back. If anyone, the questioner or any other person, feels the need of such a help, well, one may use it. In spirituality, there are no musts and must nots. One cannot give a universal, rigid discipline. One has to find out, everyone has to find out what is necessary. So one person may chant mantras, another person may play a cassette of Yehudi Menuhin and listen to the violin, third one may put on a cassette of Ravi Shankar and listen to the sitar for the pacification of nerves for some time. One may do it. But it has nothing to do with meditation, nothing to do with the mind going into abeyance. The mind can get absorbed by the mantra. It can forget itself. You get lost. You get lost in the intoxication of the mantra, the meaning of the word, the sound of the word. As the people get lost when they are beating drums and doing jazz or I don't know what other things are, their dances, those wild dances or disco dances, they go on repeating the movement, repeating the sounds, and they get lost, get absorbed by it. Meditation is not getting lost. It is not getting lost. It is not self-forgetfulness. Some people may use mescaline, hashish, and LSD and God knows so many drugs to get lost. Concentration is a very useful thing, and I think it should be taught in schools where children can develop their powers, mental powers. They can strengthen the mind. They can sharpen the memory and receptivity. So the technique of concentration has a relevance to life, but it has nothing to do with meditation. It's just the opposite direction. Persons want to use it in the beginning for a few minutes, and then when the mind is quiet, they would like to plunge into silence. Everyone is free to do that. How can I judge what is necessary for any other human being? How can I tell another being, you must do it, you must not do it? How can anyone put oneself in that presumptuous position? One can only analyze things as they are, share one's understanding, and leave other human beings entirely free to find out what is necessary for them. But techniques, methodologies, like concentration or any other, require psychophysical activity which keep the center alive, the me very much alive as the experiencer, and leads to a new conditioning through new experiences. So one says, one observes and grows into an all-inclusive awareness instead of exclusive concentration. In concentration, you create a direction, an exclusive direction in which you engage your consciousness. You exclude the rest of life. But meditation is a state of all-inclusive awareness. The abeyance of conditioned mind and the release of unconditioned intelligence are the paths of all-inclusive awareness, where you are sensitive to everything. Have we got any more questions? Have we any more questions?
Yes.
Please.
Once one reaches the state of abeyance, how does one handle differently emotions and thoughts?
Emotions and?
Thoughts.
It is a speculative question. When the state of abeyance is reached, how does one handle emotions? There could be answer in one sentence. discover the state of abeyance and find out what happens. I am not going to do that. I am not going to do that. One could give that answer, find it out for yourself. Because if I describe it, then the mind will convert it into an idea and will try to reach out towards that idea. You see, the description of the state of abeyance is such a dangerous subject. One doesn't know how to communicate about it without creating an opportunity for the listener to carry back an idea. Now, when the state of abeyance is reached, how does one handle emotions? Will there be any emotions or sentiments left when the total mind goes into abeyance? Emotions, sentiments, feelings are contained in the mind. The mind has gone into abeyance. So the movement of emotions or sentiments or feelings cannot be there. Will the person then become absolutely cold or dry? Not possible, because as soon as the total mind goes into abeyance and the perceptive sensitivity, the intelligence, the awareness of the wholeness of life is there, it brings to life what is called love. Love is not a sentiment. Love is not a feeling. It is not a reaction. It is not the opposite of hatred. The awareness that life is a totality, that everything is interrelated, that life is a wholeness, that awareness stimulates a new dimension of sensitivity, which is love, which is very deep. Love is a dimension where there is no ego at the center. Even in the limited experiences of love between two persons, if the love visits, and it does visit every human being sometime or other, a person stimulates that dimension of love in you, or an event stimulates it, a poem, a song, nature, joy stimulates. And what happens then? If one has observed oneself in the moments of love, there is no ego left at the center. Then you do not want to get anything back for what you do. The opportunity to do, the opportunity to act, the opportunity to get related becomes its own fulfillment. The very action becomes its fulfillment. There is no hope, there is no expectation to get anything in return. The movement of love is the movement of egolessness. It has a different intensity. It makes you so fearless that you can throw the whole society on one side and follow the dictates of love. So, love stimulates egolessness and fearlessness. Now that intensity is not sustained, and the mind takes over that state of love as an experience and then creates an enclosure about it, and the whole misery begins. The whole cycle of suffering begins. But love is a state of egolessness. Intelligence is the energy of that state. So, when the mind has gone into abeyance, obviously there will not be fleeting sentiments and emotions on the superficial level, but there would be the passion of love, the vitality and the vigor, the freshness of love. Love has a tremendous momentum, much more than any thought, any idea, any sentiment, any feeling. Feelings and sentiments come like ripples and subside. But once love dawns upon your heart as a dimension, then it is there, irrespective of who is around you. There is that tenderness. The tenderness that we have, the sentiments and emotions today, is compartmental. A person who can be very tender and get very sentimental and emotion towards one person from whom we get some pleasure or some security or money or something or other, one is very tender to that person. And the same person can be very cruel and harsh to another from whom there is no possibility of getting any pleasure, agreeability or security. So our sentiments and emotions, stimulating tenderness, very compartmental. When the mind goes into abeyance, there is a sensitivity which is not compartmental, which is not stimulated by persons, not based on expectations, not based on pleasure seeking, but it is just there. When a child grows into youth, a young girl grows into beautiful young maiden, or a boy grows into a handsome young man, the youth is there. In every fiber of the being, there is that vitality and energy of the youth. Everything changes. The way the boy looks, the young man or the young woman looks, the tastes change from boyhood to youth, girlhood to womanhood. Taste for clothes, taste for food, the way of walking, the way of responding, looking, carrying the body. Don't you see? Youth is a dimension. In the same way, abeyance of the total mind is a dimension in which the whole being changes. The way the person sees, the way the person looks, the way the person relates, everything changes. So, in place of fleeting, temporary, compartmental sentiments and emotions of kindness or tenderness, there is the tenderness of love, which is called compassion. Love and compassion go together. Such a person may be exposed to pain, physical pain. Such a person may be exposed to the cruelties of the world, harshness of realities, when the person lives in society. But there is no ego to get hurt. The intelligence registers the event. But there is no ego to create a psychological suffering out of the hurt. There is no ego to carry the memory of the hurt and wound. So instead of personal suffering and misery, there is a sorrow that emerges out of that experience of pain. And that sorrow is for the whole human being. Compassion for the whole human race. Such a person belongs nowhere or belongs everywhere. There's no identity left, my friends. When the known, the conditioned mind goes into abeyance, the person is reduced to somewhat like a drum. The drum contains only emptiness. When you touch the drum, it gives out a note. In the same way, the person contains the wholeness, the emptiness of the wholeness, the holiness of the wholeness. And in relationship, if you touch the person, if the person has to respond to you in speech, in action, the note that is given by the drum, the note given by the person living in the emptiness is love and compassion, nothing else. What can there be in the realm of non-duality? What can there be in the awareness of unity or oneness of life but just love and compassion? Or sorrow that accompanies love. It's a kind of harmony, peace, of relaxation, clothed in flesh and bone, that moves around in society. The person has a name. The person's body has needs of food, clothing, shelter. Please do not misunderstand. All the needs remain there. But yet, in the movement of relationships, there is a sense of nobodiness, no images to protect, nothing to pretend. There is a nobodiness and nothingness in the movement of relationship. Or there is a wholeness or holiness in the movement of relationships. Look at it in any way. You can call it emptiness, you can call it wholeness, they are the same. Thank you for cooperating with me and allowing this verbal communication about one of the most difficult subjects in such a peaceful and attentive atmosphere. I'm thankful for the quality of listening you have given me.
First question. On another evening, you said that body needs pleasure. Tonight you seem to identify pleasure with self-deception. Would you please clarify your views on pleasure?
Just once more, please.
On another evening, you said that body needs pleasure. Tonight you seem to identify pleasure with self-deception. Would you please clarify your views on pleasure?
Another question.
Will not saying that one must act out one's understanding cause irresponsible and incorrect actions by those with a false understanding?
Yeah. That's all?
There's another one too.
Pardon?
There's another question also. I'll just read two for now.
Yes. What have we been talking about this evening? What are the obstacles in the growth of understanding? One doesn't say there is anything wrong with pleasure. But if the desire for pleasure, sensual or psychological, becomes a hindrance in the implementation of understanding, then you will call that clinging to pleasure as an obstacle, won't you? The questioner says, one evening you said, pleasure is a necessity. I don't remember to have said that, but I could have said that you cannot avoid pleasure and pain. You live in the realm of duality. When there are agreeable sensations to the body, we call it pleasure. And when there are disagreeable sensations, we call them pain. You cannot avoid that. They are going to be there. So, we may pass through the events of pleasure, pleasurable food, pleasurable clothing, pleasurable houses, pleasurable music. There's nothing wrong in it. And even today I am not saying that you should deny pleasure. But if it becomes, the idea of pleasure becomes a hindrance and says, let me not live my understanding, otherwise I'll have to forego a certain kind of pleasure, then that is attachment. Pleasure mongering, pleasure seeking is one thing, and welcoming the pleasure that comes in daily living is another. It's a question of attitude towards pleasure or attitude towards pain. When the questioner says, please clarify your views about pleasure. Attachment is a kind of bondage. It doesn't allow to move you freely. It may be attachment to the pieces of furniture at home, attachment to a dog, a cat, attachment to human beings. Anything can be an object of attachment. So, if there is attachment to pleasure, one wants an assurance or a guarantee that one will get pleasure, and then one moves into action. If there is no assurance, or if it is not possible to have a guarantee, then one turns away from that path. I am not advocating any path of self-denial or torturing oneself. No, far, far, far away from that. But we have become pleasure mongers, pleasure seekers. And if truth might create a situation where we might not have access to pleasure, we will brush aside the truth rather than forego pleasure. And I might have been also distinguishing between what is pleasure and what is joy. Joy is a causeless vibration, spontaneously awakened in the being. Pleasure requires an object and a dependency upon the object. So I don't know what clarification the questioner really wants. It's natural, pleasure or pain. It's natural to have a sex urge or sex impulse. But if that becomes an obsession, if that becomes the addiction to sexual pleasure, becomes a hindrance in living the truth that one understands, then one would say, well, beware. What was the next question? You can read from there.
We're not saying that one must act out one's understanding, cause irresponsible and incorrect actions by those with a false understanding.
What is false understanding? I understand according to the growth that has taken place in me, the growth of sensitivity, maturity. So, understanding depends upon the maturity or the immaturity. I may not be mature, so at this moment, at this stage of my growth, my understanding will have one form. It will have one expression. I live it, and in the living of it, I discover that this understanding was not correct. It is not what I had imagined it to be. So, one may commit a mistake. One learns from the mistake. And what the deficiencies in the previous understanding get removed. And when I learn from the mistakes that I commit, my understanding becomes more mature. If I am afraid of committing mistakes, or if I am afraid that my understanding might be false, that is to say, could be incorrect, it could be inaccurate, lack precision, it could be a little clouded by vagueness. All this is possible. We are not perfect people. So when we begin to live our understanding, it's quite likely that we commit mistakes. What's wrong? We learn through mistakes. You know, life requires a movement. Accept an authority, create an ideal out of that authority, then approximate your actions to that ideal and strive after that ideal. This has been the way to move. There is no movement. The experiences of other people have been converted into an authority. That has become a goal. And I reach out towards the goal, all the time approximating my actions to somebody else's experiences, trying to repeat them, trying to conform to them. There's no movement. It's only a projection of the past. It is trying to give the past a continuity through my life, through my behavior. Conformation, repetition, acceptance of authority, they do not allow you to move freely. So we are accustomed to that. So there is no possibility of committing a mistake because there is a clear-cut ideal, a goal, a religious ideal, a political ideal, a cultural ideal, and you just move towards that ideal, as millions have moved. That's one kind of movement and one kind of life. And the other is, we are talking about the area of religion and spirituality. In relationships with human beings and in relationship with the unknown fields of life, unknown dimensions of life. So one doesn't accept any authority, but one investigates, explores, experiments, understands and lives it. Then there is real movement. Maybe only one step, but that one step is much more important than 10 steps taken in a repetitive, mechanistic way. So how can understanding be false? It can be vague. It can be inaccurate. I'll find out. The only way to find out whether the understanding is fictitious, inaccurate or correct, the only way to find out is to live it, to implement it, to put it into action. It's the act of living that is important. It's the quality that we bring to the act of living that is important. Otherwise, you can go on repeating existing patterns of behavior for 60, 70, 80 years. And live in so-called security. That is second-hand life. That's not a first-hand creative life. There's no originality in it. The moment I understand the distinction between the false and the true, the responsibility is to let the false drop away without clinging to it. Implementing the truth or living the truth of understanding means letting the false drop away without protecting it in any way. Isn't that our daily experience? How we protect the false? How we protect the weaknesses? And pretend that transformation is very difficult, that communion with the divine is extremely difficult. Don't we create a world of make-believe that it's too difficult? There is no willingness to let the false drop even after having seen it. And to justify, we say it is extremely difficult. So what is needed today is a handful of psychological revolutionaries who are willing to stake their lives for the truth that they understand about the psychological facts. Not psychological reformers, but revolutionaries who will play with the unknown, investigate it. The theme of this evening is rather abstract, so I can't help it. We have to use the word understanding, knowledge, and obstacles in the path. The faculty of understanding is incorporated in every being. I hope you will notice I am not saying every human being. I am saying every being. Non-human beings also can understand. They may not be able to know, but they understand. They feel, they sense. The capacity to sense, to feel, to understand, I think is the nature of life. I don't know if it will make any sense to you if I say that even the trees, the plants, have an understanding. They respond to love, affection. Non-human species also have the capacity for understanding, tenderness, even compassion. They have a capacity for friendship, companionship. In India, some 40 years ago, there lived a holy person in mountains in central parts of India, a Muslim holy person. In deep forest, in a cave, the person used to live. And at night, he would make a huge fire in front of the cave and sit there in meditation. By midnight, a tiger living in those mountains would come by and sit by the fire near the holy person for a few hours and depart in early morning. Now once it so happened that a person who was crossing that forest lost way, and by 8 o'clock in the night he saw the fire, so he went near the cave, met the holy person, and that sage told the traveler, the pilgrim, please don't stay here. I show you the way, you please climb down. It's not safe for you. And the passenger, the pilgrim, said he was so tired he could not walk even for 10 minutes. He just needed rest. The holy person persuaded him. And the pilgrim said he simply could not do it. He had to spend the night there. Well, after having fed him with whatever there was in the cave, this sage did one thing. He said to the passenger, give me your clothes and you wear my clothes. So they exchanged clothes and said, now you sit near this fire. Don't get frightened if you see anything. Don't change your position. Sit quietly. And the holy person went away. He walked away. Perhaps a couple of miles. And under a tree, he stretched himself. Well, as usual, the tiger came. And while he was passing by that way, he saw the person lying there. They were great chums. They had been friends for years. But the tiger smelled the clothes, the odor of the clothes. So he must have felt that it was a different person. He pounced upon the person and just on the throat. So a very deep sigh escaped this sage, the holy person, the saint. And the tiger understood that he had committed a mistake. It was not a stranger, it was his friend whom he had attacked. To cut the long story short, the tiger put his head on the chest of the holy person and gave up his body. The tiger died along with the saint. I am not telling you any mythological stories. This is what actually happened few years ago. The sensitivity that the tiger has. There is a joint tomb. The saint and the tiger have been buried together in those forests. So a non-human being can love, has understanding, has sensitivity. Understanding does not require knowledge. Understanding is the sensitivity, perceptive sensitivity of the whole being. There is very little chance of understanding being false. It may be a little vague because it is sensing and feeling your way. It may not have the mechanical and dead accuracy of your so-called knowledge, which is relevant to the material world, but is not relevant when it comes to our relationship with the cosmic life, the universal life, with the unknown aspects of our own being. So when someone says a false understanding or a wrong understanding, I would like to share with that person that there is a possibility of wrong information also. The crux of the thing is, the crux of the issue is, we have lived by the authority of knowledge and words and information for thousands of years. And if somebody says, brush that aside, you move and you live, you discover, trust your own understanding, live by that, be a light unto yourself, then one feels, am I adequate for such an understanding? Have we got a question? Yes.
You speak much about alertness.
Pardon?
You speak much about alertness. I find my work makes me so dull, mechanical, and tired that it is very difficult to be alert.
You talk so much about alertness, and my work makes me move mechanically and makes me dull and tired. Yes? How can I be alert? How can there be alertness?
Find it hard to be alert, difficult to be alert.
Well, you and I cannot change the present society. The harsh reality is the social structure and this industrial culture gives more importance to machines, figures, numbers, profits, losses, prosperity, and so on. Much more importance to all these than to concrete human beings or their human relationships. We are living in a dehumanized, depersonalized civilization. Do we see that? Well, I see it, but I cannot move away. I have a family. I have to raise children. I must do a job. So I live there. and my work is of such a nature that I have to go on repeating certain tasks year after year, day in and day out. Now this is a given reality. I cannot escape from it. All right, we accept that. In order that my body does not succumb to the stress and strain and does not get worn out, I'll have to do something about me. I may have to spend 7-8 hours in the job situation, in the office, in the factory, or whatever. I might have to spend, say, 1/3 of my day in that. And I have with me 2/3 of the day, say 16 hours left with me. Can I do something? Can I do anything to vitalize my body so that it does not succumb? If we say the job situation is such, it makes me dull, tired, worn out, and if we stop there, there will be a feeling of self-pity. Oh, poor me. And a kind of martyr complex. And then self-pity will release a number of negative energies, lead towards despondency, depression, negativity. Then you go home and you just sit down. Not relax, but sit down in laziness. Because you are poor you, poor me. So you throw yourself in the sofa or a chair or whatever it be. So the first thing is not to have an attitude of poor me, not to have an attitude of self-pity. Please, we are talking about how to energize and vitalize the being, how not to succumb. I have accepted the work. Whether I like it or not, this is inevitable for me. If it is possible for me to walk out and give up the job, I will, but it's not possible. So, now what I have to make the best of it. First of all, my attitude will be of reconciliation to the fact, no grudge, no friction while I am in the office. I'll go through it. In a very robust way, I'll go through it. I have to. Not with the idea of self-pity. Please do see. If I have the attitude of self-pity, then while I'm working in the office, there will be a friction like a thorn in my heart, a grudge in my heart, and I'll be divided. One part of me will be working in the office, another part will constantly go on resenting it. It's vitally necessary that we do not divide ourselves and do not create a chronic sickness of resentment and reluctance and bitterness and cynicism, all negative energies. Now, if that is understood, already the change in the attitude towards the work is going to affect the leakage to energies. The leakages will be plugged. There will be no negative attitude. Now, can I turn to my physical structure and vitalize it through proper food and exercises? Can I utilize my time and do that? I have to take the responsibility. Nobody is going to do it for me. So I'll have to find out what kind of food will maintain my energy. The energy in the nervous system. Not make it heavy or sluggish, but keep it very sensitive, sensitizing the body through proper food and proper exercises. It doesn't require much time. You may take exercise at most for 15-20 minutes, half an hour. One may take exercise for, if one does yogasanas, the Eastern yogic physical culture, one may do the asanas for hardly 12 minutes. You can go through 6 postures, different postures. One posture for 2 minutes. You can go through 6 and then do breathing exercises for 3-4 minutes. Finish it in 15 or 16 minutes. If you are doing the physical exercises the Western ways, you may need 20 minutes or half an hour, not more. So, in order to retain my sanity, my alertness, my freshness, I pay this half an hour daily for the exercises. I may do it in the morning, I may do it in the evening. It's up to my temperamental choice, but that I go through, so that I don't become dull. The questioner says, I become dull. I become worn out. I'll have to find out what is the ratio, what is the ratio of proteins, carbohydrates, etc. that suit me. I'll have to find out. Non-fermented, simple food which will energize the body. Vegetables or fruits or nuts or whatever. I can talk about all these things here in India. To talk about fruits and nuts, impossible. Even to say that you should have a cup of milk a day, very few people can have that luxury. But you are living in an affluent country. Fortunately, if you turn to a proper relationship with diet, you can afford to do it. So it vitalizes the body by that. Thirdly, if I may suggest in a very friendly way, if one could allot some time for total relaxation of the body and mind, just sit down in any posture you like, but keeping the spinal cord straight and the neck straight, and relax. Be in the state of non-doing. Be in a state of non-action. Say for half an hour. That relaxation will again revitalize the body. It will re-energize the body. As sleep energizes you, this total relaxation in the state of non-action also energizes the whole being. The questioner says, you talk so much about alertness, my work makes me dull, tired and worn out. I'll say, my friend, if you can walk out of the situation, do walk out. The speaker is a wanderer and has been visiting Australia since 1971 a number of times. A few hundred youths in 1972, after long discussions, decided that it was useless to live in the cities. This mechanical life, repetitive life, exhausts the being. So they formed groups called New Era Consciousness groups. They launched a campaign, New Era Consciousness campaign. And they decided to move away from the cities. Not one or two, but few hundreds. Government gave them land on the border of New Queensland and New South Wales, on the border of these two districts. They have a third rainbow district, and which these people have settled down, exploring an alternative way of living. They have settled down in very small, call them communes or call them villages, and they are exploring economy for peace, politics for peace, education for peace. They do not send their children to the traditional schools. They are exploring how to educate the children. A great adventure. They have a tri-monthly magazine which they call Social Alternatives, published from Brisbane University. They felt the urge, they thought this way of living, this sick civilization, this neurotic society, we must find out some other way. So when there is an urge, if there is not one individual, but if there is a group, the group could turn away from the jobs, from the work, from the whole way of living that makes you dull, mediocre, deprives you of the very sap of life, exhausts you, eats up into the vitals of your energy. Then people can become explorers. You see, that's a way of looking at life. It's a kind of robust attitude. Take up the challenge. One is not talking about the communes of hippies and beatniks and Beatles and those who went astray because of they were lured by the drugs, consciousness expanding drugs and what have you. They were also explorers, but they got stuck up in many things. So either you leave the work or the job, walk out, and find out some other way of earning a livelihood. That's the first priority. If that can't be done, then make the best of what it is and help the body and mind to retain its sensitivity, freshness, etc. If you have like-minded friends, then investigate. If you can, stake your lives for exploring a different way of living altogether. Have we covered all the questions? Yes? Was it a difficult evening?